All right, let's talk about one of the most important skills you will ever learn, whether you're still in school or about to step into your first job. We're talking about project time management. Today, we're going to break down the essentials and turn all that textbook theory into real, practical tools you can actually use.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get into why time is such a tricky beast to manage. Then I'll walk you through a simple 6-step framework to get a handle on it. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, breaking down your work, putting it in order, figuring out how long it'll take, and making it visual. And we'll wrap up with the most powerful tool of all, finding your project's critical path.
So why do we even need a whole explainer on this? Well, it's because time is just different. It's not like money or people or equipment. It's the one resource you will never, ever get back.
I mean, this is the question that keeps project managers up at night, right? You can have a brilliant team, a huge budget, a perfectly clear goal, but if that schedule starts to slip, the whole thing can go sideways. So what's really going on?
Well, it really boils down to a few key things. First, time just doesn't care. It marches on no matter what you do. You can't buy more of it, you can't save it for later. And then, you've got people. Everyone works a little differently, right? And those different styles can sometimes cause friction. Plus, you might even be dealing with different cultural views on what a deadline really means. It gets complicated fast. Okay, so faced with this massive, unforgiving challenge, we can't just cross our fingers and hope for the best. We need a system. We need a structured way to tackle this, and that's exactly what a schedule management framework is for. Whoa, okay, I know what you're thinking. This looks intense. This is the official, by-the-book breakdown of everything involved. But don't worry, you don't need to memorize all of this. The big idea here is just to see that managing a schedule isn't a single event, it's a whole process. It starts with planning how you're even going to approach the schedule, and it goes all the way to controlling that schedule when the project is up and running. So, let's just boil all that complexity down into 6 clear steps. You plan, you define, you sequence, you estimate, you develop, and finally, you control. That's your roadmap. For the rest of our time here, we're really going to focus on the heart of it all, steps 2 through 5, because that's where you actually build your timeline from scratch. All right, let's get our hands dirty. We're going to see how this whole thing is built from the ground up, starting with the very first step, chopping up your big project into small pieces and figuring out what order they need to be in. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with the activity. You can just think of these as the individual Lego bricks of your project. They're the specific individual tasks on your to-do list. The key is that each one is a chunk of work you can wrap your head around and eventually say, okay, this will take this long and need these resources. Now, once you have your list of activities, you got to figure out how they connect. You can't, for example, paint the walls before the walls have been built. That's a mandatory dependency. It's just the physical reality of the work. But maybe your team decides it's best to test the software as you code it. That's a choice, a discretionary dependency. And then there are external ones, like having to wait for a city permit before you can start construction. That's totally outside your control. So, how do we visualize all these connections? We use something called a network diagram. Now, there are 2 main ways to do this. There's the older way, the arrow diagramming method, which is a little clunky, and then there's the much more common and modern way, the precedence diagramming method. Pretty much all project software uses this one because it's just way more flexible. And this slide shows the difference perfectly. See on the left, in that older method, the arrows are the tasks. It's kind of weird, but on the right, the modern way, the boxes are the tasks, and the arrows just show you the flow from one to the next. It's so much cleaner and easier to understand. Okay, so we've got our tasks. We know the order they need to happen in. Now comes the million-dollar question. How long is each one going to take? This is all about estimating, and then turning those estimates into a schedule that everyone can actually look at and understand. Now listen up, because this next point trips up everybody when they're starting out. The difference between effort and duration. Think about writing a term paper. The effort might be, say, 10 solid hours of research and writing. But the duration could be a whole week because you have classes, you sleep, you eat. That 10 hours of work is spread out over a longer period. They are not the same thing, and knowing the difference is absolutely critical for good planning. So how do we show all of this? Well, the undisputed champion, the rock star of project scheduling, is the Gantt chart. It's basically a simple bar chart that puts all your tasks on a calendar so you get this amazing visual of what's happening and when. And here's a perfect example. You can see the big picture items like design are these thick summary bars. Those little diamonds? Those are milestones, key deadlines or events. And the arrows linking everything together? Those are the dependencies we were just talking about. It's basically your entire project story, all in one picture.
All right, now we get to the main event. This is maybe the most important analytical tool you have for managing time. Once you have all your tasks, their dependencies, and how long they'll take, you can finally calculate your project's critical path.
So what is it? The critical path is the longest chain of connected tasks in your project. Now, that might sound weird. Why is the longest path the most important one? Well, think about it. Any delay to any task on that longest path will absolutely 100% delay the finish date of your entire project. There is zero wiggle room, no slack on the critical path.
And how do you find it? It's actually pretty straightforward. You just go back to that network diagram we looked at earlier. You trace every single possible route from the start box to the finish box. Then, for each route, you just add up the time it takes to do all the tasks along that path.
Let's look at this example. For this little project, it turns out there are 4 possible paths to get from start to finish. We've added up the durations for each one. Path 1 takes 30 days, Path 2, 29 days, Path 4, 26 days, but you can see one of them is clearly longer than the rest.
And there it is. Path 3 takes 33 days. That makes it our critical path. And what this number tells you is the absolute shortest amount of time this project can possibly be finished in. As the manager, you now know that tasks B, D, and J are the ones you have to watch like a hawk.
And this leads to some really important advice, especially for those of you just starting your careers. You're going to be asked, how long will this take you? And it can feel like a lot of pressure. But here's the secret. The most important thing isn't to be perfectly right, it's to be honest and to be early. If you start working on something and realize your estimate was way off, speak up. Let people know right away. It is so much easier to fix a plan at the beginning than it is to explain a huge delay at the end.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Building a solid schedule is a massive achievement, but it's really just the beginning. The real test of a project manager comes when things change. And trust me, they always change. The plan is your starting line. Learning to adapt and control that plan when reality hits is what truly separates the pros.